Hi everyone, welcome to the Action Movie Show. My name is Carlos Alcazar, and as always with me is my cohort, Manyninjas. Hello, Manyninjas.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. How's it going?
Sometimes I wish that they would answer you.
They're probably waving hi. Speaking of waving hi, hey, Come Zero. Been a while. Welcome back to the show.
What a lot of you don't know is that Manyninjas, when we're not actually having these chats, he tells you about videos he's making. He tells you about video game related content he's making. But really, he just talks to the Mortal Kombat bear.
Do not question my conversations with the Ninja Bear. They're very informative.
My concern isn't about your conversations. My concern is about what the bear's telling you.
All I'm saying is, he's the one who helps set the schedule for the show these days. And what movies come up next.
And now you know about the production values we have on the show. Clearly, we need to increase our budget. But, be that as it may, this time around, we have ourselves part of our impromptu video game adaptation action movie two-parter, Extravaganza. We should really get some kind of a graphic. This would require budget and an effort.
Well, budget, effort, and different software. And post-production, for that matter, which, because we're doing this, as I remind you, on Google Hangouts, we don't have.
Yep, so you get our glorious low-tech production values. So, boom. 1995, Mortal Kombat, the movie. So this one here is, in contrast to last episode, this is a decent video game adaptation that actually made money. A novel and quaint concept.
Not only made money, it managed to make money, while still actually being a relatively decent representation of the series it was based on, instead of completely making up shit as it went along. This should be the blueprint of how more video game adaptations, which stick closer to the original story source, should be done, realistically.
To be fair, the Mortal Kombat universe did actually have backstories. I remember playing the original Mortal Kombat, and every single character had a little bio write-up. So they actually did have a backstory to the tournament. Now, when you're making the adaptation, you could choose to follow it if you want, but at least you have a basis for it. There's some reason for them being there.
Generally, yes, technically, the Street Fighter characters did also have their own backstory, although, realistically, especially as time went on...
It was written on a cocktail napkin.
I didn't say it was well assembled. In some characters' case, they were just really flimsy, but they were present. But in the case of Mortal Kombat especially, story is kind of, especially right now with the current modern-day adaptations of Mortal Kombat games, story is actually one of the big driving force behind it, and why the latest game, well, not the one that just got announced, MKX is, of course, still yet to go, but the last MK that is kind of a revision of the rest of all the earlier entries, kind of a series reboot, is particularly well known for its story content, and generally NetherRealm Studios, the new age version of Midway, for better terms, has been taking the whole idea of actually having a story in their fighting games and running with it to some considerable success.
Indeed. So for me, Mortal Kombat was always, it had two things going for it. Number one, it had the big reputation because, all right, we'll get into the movie here in a second, but I want to kind of, usually Manyninjas is the one who will go into the big backstory. I'm not going to go into a big elaborate thing, but I do want to set a little background for those younger viewers who don't remember what this was like. So this movie is 19 years old now, so 1995. The game came out around 93. So I would have been around 10 years old at the time that this came out. The big thing at the time was two things. Number one, you did have more of a story to the characters. They did have this whole elaborate thing brought out. But honestly, the thing that drew a lot of people to the actual video game was honestly that this was the first video game that had characters that look realistic because they would use video. They used motion capture basically with people. It was very crude. Remember, it's 93. This is on Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, so it's super crude at the time. But you actually took like video capture of people to try to make it look like real people, so they did, more or less. But to go along with that, you actually had a fair amount of blood, and you also had like really violent fatalities. The way you could kill your opponent at the end, if you activated everything, the fatality was the thing that set people off, and got a bunch of people to question, is this suitable for kids to play? Well, they had I think you had to be over a certain age. I don't think you had to be 18, but I know there were age restrictions at the time. But realistically, if you wanted the game, your parents could buy it for you. But at the same time, there was a lot of controversy. Is this okay? So the fatality thing became its gimmick, its long-standing tradition. But at the same time, in 1993, it was a completely new thing. You could rip your opponent's head off. The character that I remember playing the most early on was Sub-Zero. His fatality was to rip the opponent's head off, and at the same time, you would have their spine dangling down. That was his fatality. And I enjoyed it thoroughly, I'll be perfectly honest with you. It might explain a lot. But at the same time...
Very much so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, though, it was completely different than what the other fighting games were doing. In contrast to Street Fighter, which is really more cartoony, Mortal Kombat was always much darker. And I think the movie reflects a little bit of that because it does carry a couple of these themes, and they do follow with a little bit of the story intertwined in order to kind of make it work. So based on that background, that's kind of where it leads us to this. It's a super successful franchise that spawned this movie. So Manyninjas, why don't you start us off with kind of your initial thoughts?
All right. Now, before I do the initial thoughts of the movie, I'm just going to make one small correction to the kind of your backstory there. You're referring to mostly how they had the game rating system set up there. Prior to Mortal Kombat, no, they actually realistically didn't. It was the violent nature of this game which effectively caused the video game industry to have to adopt and make up the whole age rating system as kind of a result of Mortal Kombat. You go through a bunch of games that are prior to that, they're not really present. They don't have any.
I didn't say there was one before. I just said at the time the game came out, within short order, I know that there was a restriction.
Yeah. Basically, Mortal Kombat is the game that made up the whole age system because it was just so over the top at the time and people hadn't seen anything like that. It was kind of the knee-jerk reaction.
Do you actually have, now in the background there in the little display, you've got the Mortal Kombats there.
Yeah.
Does one of them have that age restriction, like little rectangle that I was referring to?
Oh, the combat or the competition edition for the Super Nintendo, maybe it does on the back, but no. But just to show you an example, well, there are a handful of Genesis titles I'm just grabbing off here. In this case, some of the Sega titles. Those are pre-Mortal Kombat titles. Let's see, I can remember get it. No, Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition was post. Here's another pre-Mortal Kombat title, Revenge of Shinobi. Notice you see no tags on there whatsoever. Give me a second, I'll need to take off my headphones so they don't knock everything down this time around. I'm learning as the show goes on. But generally, oddly enough, on the Super Nintendo one, it doesn't have it on there. But if you go for the Genesis version, MA13, which is one of the earlier ones they have on there, MA17 for the second title. Let's see, I actually have a box copy of Mortal Kombat 2. By this point, may not be appropriate for players under 17 years of age. Parental discretion advised. And this is on the Super Nintendo thing, so they started introducing it themselves later on. So yeah, afterwards, especially on the MK game, they really started to add on the whole rating system onto a bit of everything. And at this point, in the modern generations, basically from Super Nintendo and stuff onward, it became kind of a regular label you'd see.
Right. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. When you were showing them, we were able to see most of them, but one thing that I couldn't... You were showing the label on like the original Mortal Kombat there. You couldn't actually see it. So the original Mortal Kombat was 13.
MA13 for the Genesis one. I believe the part of the reason that it wasn't present on the Super Nintendo one, because the quote-unquote competition edition, under the standard normal settings, is actually a censored game. For the
Yeah, that's right. They had the no blood mode thing.
Yeah, so basically you entered a special code just to turn on the blood for the original Super Nintendo thing, and by the time it reached Mortal Kombat 2, because of kind of losing out on some potential sales, because it was a dumbed down version of the original arcade game, which, as you can probably guess, had the most realistic version of the graphics for everyone. They ended up making that MK2 was a full-fledged, proper representation of what can be done on the system anyway, representation of the port for their original arcade game.
Yeah. Now let me come back here for 1 second. So to put it in perspective, though, think about that. This is 1993. In 1993, 21 years ago now, that kind of dates myself at least a little bit. At the time, you literally had a scenario where on the Super Nintendo version, you had to punch in a code on your controller to activate blood. You know, you look at it now, a lot of the kids playing a lot of these games would be like, why would you even need to? At the time you did. That's what they wanted to do. I'm actually surprised it was MA13 for the first one, because I'm trying to think back. I played both at the time. I feel like the original Mortal Kombat was a lot more raw. By the second one, it was a little bit more polished. It actually...
there were more violent things in the second one. The first one was actually more tame in certain sections, except for the notable ones like Sub-Zero's spine rip. That's the only thing.
I was gonna say, like, what? I'm on you right now.
Yeah.
What was more violent in the second one? To be honest, the characters seemed more cartoony in the second one to me.
Well, that's because, honestly, it went from some of them having either just more elaborate and more painful kind of tearing and ripping of bodies apart. Then they did silly things like, okay, now you people literally exploding into organs and bones. More bones that the human body can be possibly comprised of. There can't be those many bones, not those many ribs, etc. It's basically, was it more gory? Yes, on certain parts. Especially the cinematic fatalities, and the fact you could, like, let's say, uppercut someone into a roof of spikes, which would bleed down and then eventually fall down, on top of other things. But generally, yeah, no, it did get cartoony.
Seriously, okay, let's be fair about this, and we're going to get off the video game, I promise, in a second. Yeah. But the video game is the basis of everything that will follow in this movie. The second Mortal Kombat game was more gory, more violent, I suppose. But it was so over the top that it was just cartoonish violence at that point. Yeah. Whatever. But let's go back to the video game if we can. The
movie.
The movie. There was a movie, I swear. It's right here. Go ahead, Manyninjas.
I'm sorry, after that little diatribe. Okay, regarding the movie itself, like I've already suggested on more than one occasion, starting from the last video, this is what I would consider one of the most successful video game adaptations for movie purposes. One, most of the characters are, I'd say, a good, like, 80%, if not more, representative of the original video game selves. There's a bit of cosmetic change, of course, because let's be honest, especially if you've seen photos from the original development of the games, the original costumes were pretty damn hokey and kind of bad looking, especially if we got a good look at them. So the fact they've updated things for a proper, actually well-funded movie thing, that's not a problem at all for me. I'd say they actually, some of them look really nice, although not necessarily exact to the original iconic looks. I'm not bothered at all. The histories, you have a few changed details here and there, but generally, no, the characters have the same general motivations for being here as they did in the original titles. No, it makes sense. And even where it slightly deviates, like the fact that you have both Sub-Zero and Scorpion working for Shang Tsung, there's explanation given in the movie of why this is plausible and why this makes sense. So the movie manages to explain anything that would be a bit obvious, like, hey, what about this? No, they explained it in that. No, that actually sounds valid. Everything's good here. Things which shouldn't be, or would realistically you think look bad in actual filming, like Goro, for instance, Just to check, Carlos, do you believe Goro was kind of a 3D thing? Yes or no?
Well, I think it was CGI.
Wrong, or at least not entirely correct. They actually
Claymation?
made no. Well, the
Yeah.
original one was claymation. The movie, no, that was a man in a suit for most of it. There's an actual live actor, and they made a large towering Goro upper torso and lower torso, which was maneuvered by a person in the suit as well as some extra hands, kind of controlling some of the extra arm bits.
1 second. What the fuck? Seriously?
Yes, Goro was actually part CGI, but also a lot of it was an actual physical suit. So he actually occupied tangible space in reality. If you wanted to see the CGI, you would see the initial appearances for Reptile in the film, which, honestly, you could tell they were CGI'd.
In fairness, this is 1995 CGI, or really 94 technically, because they would have started shooting this film months before. So about 94, 95. So this is think 20-year-old CGI graphics. Like when certain scenes where you'll see like the person in this like mythical kind of background, you can tell it's like we're working with years in the past. They just didn't have the technology to really make it look good. We'll talk about it more at the end, but I actually watched the second movie right after, just to kind of do a compare and contrast. The CGI in the second one's way worse. And the green screen is just pathetically bad at times. For this one, it actually wasn't too bad. There were certain times you could 100% tell this is CGI, but also kind of like primitive CGI. And then times where you could see like, okay, we're doing green screen, but it's kind of like, but I think if that's the case, with the guy in the Goro suit, that probably helped a lot. Because I think if they had tried to do Goro strictly CGI, I thought they did. But if they had tried to do him strictly CGI, it probably would have come off looking a little bit lame anyway. And it might have been tough for the actors to work with it. So having a real person probably made it a heck of a lot easier to actually do what they were trying to do and actually make it look like something.
Yeah, realistically, I at that point with the CGI or the level of technology as it was, CGI only Goro would have not worked. Simple enough, it wouldn't have worked. It would have looked pretty damn bad. And the fact they made an actual tangible suit was necessary and a really good design choice. Anyway,
Are you trying to say you wouldn't have been 100% into CGI Goro on a 386 machine running Windows 95?
What I'm saying is the machine would have burst into flames, or someone to real life Goro, who would have then said, "You know what? No, this is how you do it," and he would have made the suit himself, if not acted the part himself. As we're gonna have it so there, and then we're gonna have sequel. And even though I'm supposed to be dead or missing, I'm gonna be in the sequel anyway. Actually, that probably would have made a better production than the sequel was. Anyway, heading back to this film in particular. Okay, you got the costume choice, the costume design, actually really well handled. All the characters and the general plot from the original title, further good representation there. It actually manages to take the tournament format, which is something which would have not worked in the Street Fighter film, just so we can be entirely clear on that. But it takes the tournament format, which kind of seems odd or flimsy there, and actually runs with it pretty well. The fighting sequences themselves are actually really nicely handled, I personally believe. And even parts where you were dealing with something that's a little more out of the ordinary, like anything involving Goro, still feels pretty well handled. All in all, I can't really say... there are a few quibbles that are pretty much just small things that could have been done a little bit differently, but other than that, no, I can't think of any real major faults with how this film went out, considering the material it was based on and what they were kind of venturing with.
No, I'd agree with that. I think for me, I'll summarize it like this. This is a movie where we'll talk about the plot a little bit, but really we could summarize it quickly. But just all I'll say is the casting choices were very good. The Liu Kang character looks the part. Shang Tsung's character, they get away from the video game in the sense that Shang Tsung in the original video game was an old wizard. an old sorcerer who then becomes younger in the second video game, and they explain that, but they go straight to kind of almost this. They kind of merge the two because Shang Tsung is not that old. He's actually in his physical prime, which makes him look a lot better when you're doing the fight scenes, with Liu Kang. There's a reason for these two to be fighting, so it's not just we're here. No, there is a plot reason for those two to end up fighting each other. Johnny Cage is well cast because the guy looks the part. He plays it reasonably well. It's pretty one-dimensional, kind of obvious the way they play it, but it works. Sonya is played by an actress model, Bridget Wilson. I think that's right. Bridget Wilson, I think. I'd have to double check that.
The name sounds familiar, but I'm not sure, so I can't comment on that.
You know what? Fortunately, we have the internet. Hold on a second. Yeah, Bridget Wilson. That's right. Bridget Wilson. Okay, so yeah, she actually she is more of a model actress, but she plays the part well. She goes with it, and she actually has some chemistry with Johnny Cage. So the thing is, between her and the two characters, there's a little bit of chemistry between them that builds through the movie. And by the time you get to the sequel, though, you recast both characters. So you get two other actors who really have absolutely no chemistry whatsoever.
Yeah.
Which really doesn't play well, especially in relation to this one, where it felt a little bit more organic.
Let's talk of the sequel for another day, maybe, or at least at the end.
No, I just wanted to do a little compare and contrast between the two. I'll interject a little bit here and there, but for the most part, just to keep in mind. So these characters do have chemistry. They have chemistry with Liu Kang. You can buy them all being kind of friends. And then intertwined in it, you've got, I believe, Christopher Lambert. Yes, Christopher Lambert, who plays Raiden, and he's pretty entertaining as Raiden, to be perfectly honest. I like what he does when he comes around and does different parts. It plays very well. And then between these main characters, they run together very smoothly. Shang Tsung's character is the requisite amount of evil with a little bit of shiftiness and shadiness, which is really nice and kind of fun. Goro's character, when they make that character work, he's got just enough personality to make it interesting. Kano is the right amount of sleazy. You've got, I think a lot of this has to do, to be honest, with the fact that it's directed by Paul Anderson. I'm really struggling with names today. It is Paul Anderson. I'm actually getting them right, which is the scary part.
Actually, do you mind if I just interject something, speaking of the amount of sleaze for Kano in particular?
Go ahead.
You want to know something funny about Kano's portrayal and character here? They actually liked it so much back at Midway at the time that they actually changed Kano's character in official game canon later on. He was originally like a half Japanese kind of fellow. No, they ended up changing in basically the full Australian portrayal that they had in this movie because they liked how he was presented in it so much. That became the reality, and is the reality to this day.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, the actor did a great job for what it was, because they gave him a backstory, they gave him a reason for being, which in turn is the reason why Sonya is around. So every single character has a place and a purpose and a reason for being. And then once you set it up, it kind of works. Even the characters like Sub-Zero and Scorpion, you put them in there, but you gave them a reason for being there. They're part of part of the story. Reptile has a reason for being there. Again, part of the story. And you managed to get in a whole set of ninjas. So, bonus. So you've got those groups pretty well. Katana's there. She's also got a reason for being there. It all makes sense in the end. And then the actors they chose played those different parts very well. Some of them had more to do than others, but you still had a reason for everything, which I think made for a better movie. Paul Anderson's actually a pretty good director, so I think that helped a lot, since you actually had somebody who's like I can make this work with a story and make this happen. I think, though, you can tell the difference between this and the Street Fighter. You can tell the difference between, it felt like, whether it's true or not, it felt like they actually gave a little bit more of a crap about the franchise and didn't just, we're not just going to pander, obviously, but at the same time, it's no, we've got some backstory to work with. We've got a story to work with. We can actually make a decent movie out of this. And then they actually went and did it.
Yeah, no, I'm hard pressed to add too much more other than a few kind of details I noticed here or there. I think at this point, it's admittedly this thing. It's harder to talk about this movie than Street Fighter because Street Fighter had so many bad things going on about it. Well, on this hand, this film is actually competent. Not only competent, I would actually say it's really good. I can actually say right now, before we even get to the end parts of this, I could easily recommend this movie to watch, not only for just the general layman, but especially for fans of the series, just because it's a really good handling of the series, as opposed to Annihilation, which we don't talk about.
I do want to talk about Annihilation a little bit. I'll be honest with you. Let me come back. Here's the thing. Really, I'll outline the plot super, super quick. Here's your spoiler part, if you really watch the movie anyway. But like, here it is. And besides, if you pay attention to the video game at all, it's not hard to figure it out. So Liu Kang, this guy right here, he's entering the tournament. Concept of the tournament follows a little bit the story of Mortal Kombat. So you've got Outworld, who has won 9 straight Mortal Kombat tournaments. Winning the 10th would allow them to enter the Earth realm. That's what we're trying to avoid. So Liu Kang is the chosen one who ends up winning the deciding battle of the tournament, obviously. The main reason he enters into it, though, is specifically to avenge his brother, who was killed by Shang Tsung. That's the main conflict of the movie. So him against Shang Tsung is set up because Shang Tsung beat him, and like the video game, when Shang Tsung wins, or when someone in the tournament kills someone else, you know, in the movie's case, he declares flawless victory a lot. To be perfectly honest,
Shang Tsung does not know what the word means.
Exactly. I was going to say, in the video game, flawless victory means you won without taking a shot, without taking a single point of damage. In the movie, if you beat somebody convincingly, but you got hit a couple of times, he'll still give you flawless victory. But anyway, flawless victory in the movie standpoint is his excuse to take the other person's soul. But in the original game story, he was taking people's souls all over the place. So he's taking a lot of souls, is the point. And that's the source of his power, which is fine. Goro's involved because he was the previous Mortal Kombat champion. So that's why he's there. And also kind of work with the Shang Tsung. So they're working together to collect these souls and to try to win this tournament, to take over the Earth. Sonya's there because she's chasing after Kano. Kano is working with Shang Tsung to draw her in, to get her into the tournament. Johnny Cage is there because he was tricked into joining the tournament by Shang Tsung playing someone else, you know, with his shape-shifting abilities. But he's there for mostly ego, to try to prove his martial arts ability. So the story with him is really simply, he's an action star who is a legitimate martial artist, but is trying to prove his legitimacy since he enters the tournament. You've got Raiden is there from the standpoint of he has a vested interest because he likes the humans and he'd like to see them win, so he tries to provide help and guidance along the way to get them there. Specifically Liu Kang, because he is the chosen one, he tries to help him out most of all. Sub-Zero and Scorpion are there as henchmen, basically. So that's their main role here. Just trying to think if I'm forgetting anybody pertinent.
Well, okay, let's see. You said Liu Kang.
Reptile is a henchman too. We've covered that. So we've covered all the ninjas.
Yeah.
Kitana. Let me put that one in there. Yeah. Kitana is the princess of Outworld, which was a realm conquered by Shang Tsung and the Emperor, who is referenced and then seen briefly at the end of the movie. The Emperor will make more of an appearance in the sequel. But yeah, basically all the characters have a purpose and they're slotted in. All the ones that have entered the tournament were either there specifically because they wanted to be, or because they were tricked or whatever. The thing though, and the tournament format was done very well. It's weird. It's weird the way the tournament was done though, because you do see the fights, you know it's a tournament, but the tournament parts seem to be happening all over the place. Like Johnny Cage fights Scorpion in a forest randomly.
What you have to understand is Shang Tsung is as good with tournament regulations and rules as he is with the definition of the word flawless. We're not just lucky anything worked out.
Yeah. So basically, in this tournament, you can fight anybody, anywhere, effectively at any time. If they show up, then you fight. That's basically it.
As long as you're within distance enough that, in case it's a really convincing victory, you can hear Shang Tsung as he yells, "Flawless victory!" It's like, "Regal only flawless, flawless, flawless. Victory, victory, victory. Now adding Mike Vieta, yes sir, yes sir." Wait, that's another movie.
Did you really?
Yes.
Anyway, I think my favorite part was that they did manage to get in all the pieces. You did have Scorpion remove his helmet.
Mask.
Not helmet. Well, he removed his mask and his cowl.
Yeah,
So
basically
he removed the mask and the cowl to be the Skeleton Man.
Pretty much Spectre.
Yes. So he did that to shoot fire at Johnny Cage. So that was good. You had Sub-Zero freeze people. There you go. No spine ripping. Very disappointing. As someone who played Sub-Zero a lot back in the day, I know in Canada it's 14A is the movie. Yeah. I want me some spine ripping.
Well, realistically, they added this in the later tale since this was made. By the time this came out, it was around the time of MK3, I believe, when the movie came out.
Oh, gee, I don't think so. Hold on.
Either MK2 or MK3.
I think two I'll buy because the original was 93. I don't
actually
think
no.
that fast.
Check the time for MK3 because one of the things I asked you to watch on top of the movie was the cheesy, horrible, The Journey Begins kind of a prequel movie, a prequel cartoon that was actually tied in with this movie, which had a cheat code in the credit sequence for Mortal Kombat 3. So that's why I'm thinking this should be after MK3. And anyway, by the time MK2 rolls around and even MK1, the censored versions, Sub-Zero did have a fatality where he basically froze someone completely. And in the later games, they introduced froze someone completely and then smashed the frozen carcass. So that's not completely out of nowhere.
All right, so I'm doing a little bit of research here. Bear with me for 1 second.
Oh.
While I'm doing that, entertain the people. Dance or something.
Okay,
let's see. Bear.
All right, let's see. Well, on top of the little quick tidbits there, well, first of all, like I said, for the Sub-Zero, the fatality shown within the while fighting the world's deadliest mook, who does all those fancy kicks, only get frozen upon his jump kick. Also note, it only kind of makes sense that for Scorpion's thing, why the Scorpion fight had a little more time than Sub-Zero's fight, which was basically kind of a run-over match, which is an ongoing joke because basically every time Sub-Zero appears in anything, except for maybe his own storyline, he ends up getting his ass kicked somehow, especially since this is referring to the first Sub-Zero, which is apparently the jobber Sub-Zero of the series, as compared to Scorpion, which gets preferential treatment most of the time, because even at this point for NetherRealm Studios, if you look that up, the logo is effectively Scorpion. Speaking of Scorpion in this case, do you know who voices Scorpion in this movie, Carlos?
Listen, I want you to answer that, and I want you to tell me, but I just want to make a point.
Yeah.
Sub-Zero was screwed.
The first Sub-Zero, constantly.
That's all I'm saying.
The second Sub-Zero is the one that gets preferential treatment, but Sub-Zero number 1, since there's more than one in the series, Sub-Zero number 1 is always screwed over. He is the worst Sub-Zero. But
all right, now go ahead.
Okay. The reason why, with all the preferential treatment and everything there, the person who voices Ed Boon, or no, I screwed that up. The person who voices Scorpion in not only this movie, but in all of the games, is Ed Boon himself, otherwise known as one of the men behind Mortal Kombat. So that's why preferential treatment. Also, side note, semi-related to that, when they were recording the original stock footage for the ninjas in the original MK game, the original ninja color was Scorpion's yellow. It's from there that they did all the photoshopping and color changing to get all the other ninjas. Also, related note: do you know who the original ninja was?
Go
Daniel
ahead.
Placino. Daniel Placino also played Johnny Cage. So Johnny Cage is also multiple ninjas. Not many ninjas, though. I have the website for that one. So you have Johnny Cage, who is many ninjas there, but not the many ninjas, which is me. That's my website. Should have a trademark somewhere down there right now. If I'm not, I need to add that later. Yeah. So we have that. And later, after the whole kind of fallout that eventually occurred when Daniel Placino basically did work, including advertisement work for other games that were basically knockoffs of Mortal Kombat, I believe it was Carlos Placino who ended up picking up the slack and filling in for a few games as the requisite ninjas that were masked, which was basically Daniel's brother. So the Placino family is full of ninjas.
All right, then. All right. I got it. We got it. Yeah. Yeah. I actually had it a couple minutes ago. I just wanted to see how long you could ramble.
I can keep going, man.
I have no doubt. But anyway, I just wanted to fill in. So, yeah, so actually Mortal Kombat 1 came out in 1992, right at the end of 92. Yeah. Mortal Kombat 2 came out in 93, and then Mortal Kombat 3 came out in 95. So the thing is, Mortal Kombat 3 came out the same year as the movie, but depending on production time, this probably would have predated the video game slightly. But they were getting pretty close. So they were able to borrow elements, and they had the pieces already in place by that point. My main thing that I was thinking about when I was watching the movie was that I enjoyed how much. The reason I said earlier that I felt like the people that did the movie actually sort of liked the series was that they had the right amount of elements in it without pandering. They could have very easily just overdone it. They included the main elements. You know, I would have loved to have had my spine ripping, but barring that, though, I felt like they managed to include almost everything that you would have wanted the characters to have. They even at the in the final sequence, they did include the thing where a person gets hit and falls onto a bed of spikes, which is one of the classic Mortal Kombat things that you could do, which I may have spent an inordinate amount of time doing and practicing on my own, which again explains a lot.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Oh. So I think that covers, I think that covers the movie. I think, as you said, I think we both agree. Buy it.
Easy buy. Also, last game-related note, just referring to one of the ninjas. Reptile himself was technically the very first of the hidden characters, or really real notable hidden characters you find in a fighting game. Because he was originally based on the rumors that originally circulating Street Fighter II for the mysterious Sheng Long, which never existed. So, kind of as a response to that, Midway actually made Reptile, which basically is a green-colored ninja, and it's only after that that Capcom responded to their hidden character with a real hidden character of their own, being Akuma/Goki. But technically, hidden character number 1 was Reptile. That's the last game-related thing I got
there. All right. Well, just for the record, I wasn't even gonna bring it up, but just for the record, it did amuse me. The thing about the video game there, when it pertains to Reptile, is that I think what we enjoyed the most at the time. Now, you got to put yourself back in the 1993 frame of mind. We had no frame of reference for this, so later on there would be more of it. And I like how I'm getting like a lens flare right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, what I was gonna say was, let's see if I can help with that a little.
Wait. Not yet, no. There's actually more light than before, even. There we go.
Yeah. So I'm using my hand. Very high tech. No, what I was going to say was that at the time, using 1993 as a reference point, they had never done anything like that before, and it was really interesting at the time to see how excited people got. Because you could see Reptile in the game. Let me see if this works now. Nope. Yeah, people got really excited at the time because you could see Reptile in the game, and you would see Reptile would show up with all these hints And much like the code to get blood, which you had to do, which is very different from what you'd have today, you'd have the characters show up and give you tints. You have to do this. You have to do it in this location. You have to do it at this time. You have to do it in this sequence. You must do all these. You must complete all these tasks. It's like achievements now in video games. If you complete all of these tasks in the order in which they're done in the correct sequence, then you may fight Reptile.
Pretty much. And what made that funnier, especially in the arcade builds, because in terms of the actual console builds, you could always fight Reptile, or it was always possible to fight Reptile in the console builds, but in arcade builds, the first one or two that involved Reptile-based content had it so he dropped in for the hints, but he wasn't actually available for playing or to be fought against, so it wasn't until later revisions that they actually made it possible to fight Reptile, and that he had his own proper nameplate and everything at the bottom of the pit. Although in the certain console versions where, I think it was the Genesis one in particular, you could fight Reptile basically at all times, but they hadn't properly put in his nameplate, so it said Scorpion's name on there. But it actually was Reptile you're fighting.
And that, in a nutshell, is why Manyninjas is a wealth of questionably useful information.
You see what I have to put up with? This is why we have you select the movies now.
We do actually let the bear make the selections. Unfortunately, the bear only talks to the ninja guy.
I also talked to some other people there. Very active Skype going conversations I see the logs for. And do you know how many people he has on his Tumblr account? I don't even have those many people on my Tumblr account. God damn.
You have a Tumblr account?
Yes.
I'm surprised you haven't shamelessly plugged that by now.
Well, technically, that's the Mr. Ace. Not so much the Manyninjas stuff. Yeah. We have this minor separation between the personalities that we're advertising here at any given time.
Alright, so what Manyninjas figures out is multiple personalities. To conclude, buy the damn thing. Alright, shameless plugging. Go on.
Alright. Well, in terms of right now, honestly, I'm not doing anything this weekend related to my own video stuff because I'm busy watching. One second, there's a reason why. I'm busy watching EVO 2014 footage. For those not familiar, EVO is pretty much one of the more notable fighting game tournaments that are going on in the Las Vegas area. So I'm going to be watching that. But in the meanwhile, let's see what's that. I have to figure out what I'm pointing at my own end. All right, I'm on Manyninjas on Twitter. And on this side is my website, IamManyninjas.com, for more videos and updates, which will be really going back on after EVO is done. This is a Ninja Bear. Very good company. And he told me not too long ago, our next movie for the upcoming week will be Running Man, starring Arnold Strong. Otherwise Schwarzenegger. Which, God help, I don't know how to spell that.
Indeed. Yes. So for myself, it's at CarlosAlcazar2, carlosalcazar.org. I'm lazy, but I swear I will update the damn thing, I promise. With all that said, Running Man will be the next movie we're going to talk about. Not related to that before we go. You were telling me about this EVO 2014. But every time you say it really quickly, I keep feeling like I hear Emo 2014. And I keep wondering which coverage I would rather watch.
The answer is easily Evo, because one, it has more interesting stuff going on there. Well, you can see you're going to see a lot of people complaining on Evo footage too, especially after they lose things which they really felt they should have won. But they will react in more interesting fashions, because you have on one hand the Evo thing, you have some guy kind of whining about his predicaments there. On Evo, well, not a particular Evo footage there, we had someone who got so frustrated, he took his $200-300 arcade stick and spiked it on the ground out of frustration after losing a match of Street Fighter 4.
Yeah,
And
but an emo 2014, they're slitting their wrists. A true flawless victory.
well, maybe flawless with the razor. That's about it. But you don't have a smartass looking at the broken stick and then posing with the other guy's broken stick right after he finished spiking on the floor and then leaving right after. That wouldn't be happening on Emo 2014. Am I still off camera?
I'm just leaving it on you.
Okay.
Just see how long you want to steer at the screen. All right, that's enough out of us. So we'll see you on the next episode.
Actually, yeah,
Oh,
the slight note, I do have one last thing there. You have to forgive me of the timing on the next week's episode might be a little bit tricky. I should mention this up front. Because going on the next weekend, I'll be out of town from basically Friday onward, because I'll be attending the 2014 edition of the Con Bravo convention over in Hamilton, Ontario. So if there is any issues with the recording of the video, that's why I'm saying that right in advance. It's because I'm kind of out of town during the days we'd be recording on, which is kind of seemingly moved to Fridays for the most part.
Yeah, it's just what's worked out. It's happened that way. No, we'll see what we can do. Make some arrangements. We may end up recording early and then just posting it on Friday. Maybe that's the way we'll go about it.
Yeah, that would probably work there. But all is well. For certain, our next video is going to be on The Running Man, which is quite frankly a good movie, which coincidentally also has someone named Sub-Zero in it, but that's another story. And yeah.
Yeah, Sub-Zero, who does far less ripping out of spines. Much to my chagrin. However, there are some good stuff in it, and we will discuss it further. All right, for myself and Manyninjas, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and comment. We always like to read and listen and, whatever. Any last words, Manyninjas?
Not particularly, but I do have one thing. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. Why?
Flawless victory.